Robert Bob Johnston was born on September 16, 1925 in Lindsay, Ontario, but his family moved to Guelph, where he completed his primary and middle schooling. Prior to the war, Bob worked at a number of jobs, including being a golf caddy. After the war, Bob lived in Lackawanna, New York for a brief stint before returning to Canada, where he obtained a job at Kimberly-Clark of Canada at Niagara Falls. He moved to Gramley, Ontario in 1965 and continued to work for Kimberly-Clark until he retired in 1985. Bob then moved to Owen Sound. In May of 1946, Bob married Audrey Small, and the couple had 2 children, Heather and Robert. Warrant Officer Johnson enlisted with 63 Battery in Guelph in 1941 and was subsequently attached to the 19th Field Regiment of the Royal Canadian Artillery. Warrant Officer Johnston continued his training with the regiment until he was posted overseas in July of 1943. He became a signaller, a gunner, and a driver of self-propelled vehicles and landed on D-Day in France with the 19th Field. Although he experienced a few minor wounds, he stayed with the regiment as it fought its way through Northwest Europe. Warrant Officer Johnston was discharged in February of 1946. Recently, Bob recounted the following story of the 19th Field as they advanced on Carpiquet Airfield. A new officer had sent Bob and a fellow soldier in a Bren gun carrier to an incorrect map reference that placed them in the middle of no man's land between the Germans and the Canadians. They took heavy shell fire from both directions, and Bob and his companion scrambled from the carrier, diving for cover by a pile of dirt. Eventually, the shell fire subsided, and Bob and his companion jumped back into the carrier, retreating to the Canadian lines. As they exited the carrier, they were hailed by Sergeant Furness to a German L-shaped trench for cover. The sergeant advised them to stay away from the far corner of the trench as it had recently been used as a latrine. As fate would have it, just after this advisement was offered, a shell landed in the trench, and the 2 soldiers had no other option than to dive into the latrine part of the trench. Recovering from this indignity, Bob said, "I couldn't stand the smell of him, and he couldn't stand the smell of me." Eventually, the 2 were able to clean themselves up and put on fresh uniforms. Bob calls this experience the crappiest day. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Warrant Officer Johnson.